Hi, I'm Chris Caron, lead artist and writer of Mystic Paths. Mystic Paths, at its core, is a third-person action-adventure game with major emphasis on stealth. You play as Lumen. Lumen is a novice wizard that lives on the island of Aurora Noctis. At the beginning of the game, Lumen has been captured and imprisoned for the use of witchcraft. He's able to break out and must escape to the other side of the island to a large mountain that he believes will provide him sanctuary. Lumen is a novice wizard, so he isn't very powerful. The guards that are patrolling the island looking for him, however, are very powerful. Lumen's attacks will do nothing to them, and if he is spotted, he will be captured and burned at the stake. At the start of the game, Lumen has access to one spell, the Telekinesis spell. He can use the spell to push objects around with an area of effect blast. Alternatively, Lumen can also use Telekinesis to grab hold of one object and move it around to gain access to new areas. The second level introduces Lumen's other spell. This spell is called Firebolt. As its name would imply, Firebolt gives Lumen the power of fire. Any wooden objects that are getting in Lumen's way, he can burn out of his way. As I stated earlier, one of the main focuses of this game is the stealth element. The guards are powerful and will kill Lumen if they spot him. The player must be quick on their feet and pay attention to the paths the guards take. If they pay attention and act quickly, they'll be able to make it to the mountain in one piece. The game doesn't just focus on running from point A to point B. The team felt as though that wouldn't allow the player to see all of the hard work and attention to detail that was put into each of the environments if we did that, so we decided to add objectives into the levels. Each level requires the player to collect a statue and place this statue upon an altar in order to progress to the next level. Our game wasn't always like what it is now. We've changed a lot since we first started. Our team initially started with 5 people, and our original game design document and storyboards that I drew showed a game that had 4 spells and numerous levels and all these grandiose ideas that were very ambitious, but a bit too much for 5 novice game designers. After the first month, our team was cut down from 5 people to 3, and as such we had to make some major revisions in order for our 3-person team to be able to complete the project. So we got together and we revised a lot of what we had. We cut down the spell count to 2 and refined the levels to be more linear. Some of our levels were just a bit too big. Also, we focused more on the stealth elements of the game. We originally wanted to make the spells do damage to enemies, but the balancing was off and we wanted to make sure the player felt like they were at the disadvantage. Since Lumen is a novice wizard, it wouldn't make sense for him to be an unstoppable tank, so we had the enemies be able to kill him in one hit, and the attacks do no damage to them. Overall, I am happy with how the game came out. I'm glad we focused on the stealth elements of the game, and I'm really excited for other people to finally play the finished version. I'm also happy that we have a story with a really awesome climax, and if there's one thing that I want people who play this game to experience, it's a really awesome moment in the second level. The statue will teleport the player into the fiery pits, and the player must use their telekinesis skills in order to move the platforms around in order to escape without falling into the lava. We really do hope you enjoy this game, and I'm going to pass this on to team lead Justin Rojas.
I'm Justin Rojas. I am the team lead for Mystic Paths. I focus primarily on the programming side and worked on the level design for the game as well. Many things went right and wrong during the development cycle of Mystic Paths, and when we looked at it, trying to figure out what went wrong, we were able to narrow it all the way down to our idea of open world player choice. In order to make such a game, we would need a larger team, and the 3-man team that we had was just too small, I think, in order to accomplish what we wanted, and that was to where the player pretty much chose their own destiny, which direction they would go, what levels they would end up seeing, and what obstacles they would come across. That was probably the biggest root of all our problems. Stemming from that took on the AI interaction and trying to let the player know that they can't hurt the enemy other than using the world against the enemy was made more difficult with this direction than the new direction that we ended up going in later. And balancing all the puzzles and obstacles was even tougher. The more open it was, the more we had to put in, and at times you would be bombarded with puzzles and obstacles and it was just constant, and other times there would be nothing for too long of a period of time. So all of our issues really came down to having too big of an idea with too small of a team. As far as what went well was narrowing our scope. Once we narrowed our scope, everything kind of fell into place, and we took it from being wide open to more of a linear, objective-based game, and each level was able to be fleshed out much better and turned out more beautifully as a result. It was more smoother. It was a lot more fun and enjoyable and interactive without bombarding the player at any time. communication in our team was not only key, but was perfect. We used email and Skype constantly and constantly kept each other up to date on everything we were doing and had done. And I think that paid off a great deal. The scripting was one that really also helped out in the long run, where we were able to take stuff and just drag and drop it into the game, and any changes we wanted to make were just go into the code, change one little line or one number, and adjust it that way. And it was a much quicker and smoother process once we got the scripting done. And for me, that was a lot of fun because, my experience with programming was not that great. And I learned a lot about Unreal Script and think it's going to help me out in learning more about Unreal Script as I continue to educate myself as I go forward, and in transitioning to another scripting language, I think will be easier for me now. And I think that the scripting was the foundation for our game. And once we were able to bring it all together, the game started to be more fun and come alive. But it truly came alive when Juan Francisco provided us with all the sound effects and the music that helped to create the emotion, helped bring the theme alive, and he just did an all-around great job. So I want to at least give him a lot of credit on that too, because without him, our game would be a little more boring and wouldn't be as lifelike and fun without that.
Hello, I'm Leif Macnaughton, the UI designer for Mystic Pass. We knew we needed text tutorials and explain the story, and a HUD and so on, so I took up the job of getting all of that working. Our project was not allowed to extend from UT, so simple things like getting text to pop up on the screen were not going to be possible without extensive scripting. The HUD, every word, and every menu is created using Flash and importing into UDK using middleware called Scaleform. When I started Final Project 1, I barely had any knowledge of Flash. I had used a little bit in the previous class, but I had barely scratched the surface. For all the UI features that the game required, I had to figure out how to get Flash files and UDK to talk to each other. The first hurdle, which took way too long, was getting UC script working correctly in order to properly update the mana and which weapon or spell was currently selected in the HUD. Even when the HUD was finally functional, it was constantly being resized and revised. I started to get a little bit better at my artwork, and we started getting a better idea of what we wanted the final version of the HUD to look like. Beyond connecting Flash and Unreal Script, the main pathway of connectivity between the two is through Kismet. For instance, when a player sees a tutorial hint pop up, the player needs to hit the E key to get it to go away. The keystroke was added because there were some complaints about players simply not reading the tutorials. Anyway, Flash has a built-in function called FS command, which allows Flash to pass commands to external programs, in this case UDK. I'm able to send out an FS command such as E was pressed, and then UDK's Kismet have it listen for the FS command string and then proceed with any number of actions. In this case, it's hooked up in such a way that once E is pressed by the player, Kismet tells it to close the movie player and make the tutorial disappear. Another more difficult integration was the inventory system that you see being used throughout the game. In this case, when the game starts, it opens up a movie player which has the entire inventory in it, except all the elements are hidden. Every time a player picks up or drops off the item, Kismet tells the Flash video to either hide or unhide the object. In fact, really the only way that the inventory is being tracked at all is through the use of booleans. And then there's just visual representation being used in Flash. Well, that's a little behind the scenes of the UI, and I hope you learned something. Enjoy the game.